It is May 20th, 2024, and as you may have heard, the president and the foreign minister of Iran, along with multiple other high-ranking officials from the country, were tragically killed in a helicopter crash. Now, there are still countless questions surrounding as the investigation into this crash is still ongoing. And I know that the narrative from the West has been to automatically criticize President Raisi, to make sure that the public, at least in the West, looks upon his legacy with nothing but criticism. But I wanted to talk to someone who is actually in Iran, who can speak for not just what it's like to live in the country, what it was like to live with Raisi as the president, but who can also speak to the political structure there. And of course, where the country goes from here as they continue to process the shock of this loss and to determine who will be their next president. So we discussed all of that and more with a special guest earlier. Let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Satareh Sadeqi, an Iran-based independent journalist and researcher. Satareh, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Now, I wanted to get into the latest here. I know that we've had some very heavy news over the last 24 hours with the president of Iran, along with the foreign minister and multiple other high-ranking officials killed in this tragic helicopter crash in the East Azerbaijan province. Now, when it comes to what the West is saying, they're saying that it was Turkish drones that found the crash site. How accurate are these details that we're hearing, and what do we know so far about what led up to this crash?
Well, and as far as the Iranian media have been reporting, and that's the images that have been published show, the drone was actually Iranian drone, and there was another Turkish drone that flew over the place, but it was Iranian drones that helped finding the crash site. And as you know, like initially we were not sure if it was a crash, it was a hard landing, and they reported that it was a hard landing. But as time went up, and they realized that it's like very difficult to identify or where exactly the plane was because of the terrible weather conditions, and because it's like really high up in the mountain. It was very foggy, it was very cold, it was raining in some parts, even snowing, and then it got dark, so it was very difficult, and it took a very long time until they actually found the place where the incident happened. And until it was like they got there, the rescue team got there, and it was announced that the bodies have been found, we were all hopeful that they could maybe find them alive, and just but that didn't happen, obviously. But I think we need more time to find out what exactly happened to the helicopter. But so far it looks just like a technical problem and a crash. But there are different scenarios that cannot be ruled out and need time to be clarified and to make sure what exactly has been happening, because there are different things that were happening at the same time that leads to people speculating other possible scenarios, including a sabotage. But so far we don't have evidence, so we need to wait and see.
Yeah, and I know it was, we had hours of waiting for some sort of information. And when you finally get those reports of no signs of life, I know that the rescue workers on the ground were obviously doing everything that they could to just locate the helicopter and the people there. And when it comes down to what you were mentioning, obviously you have the investigation still ongoing. This was a crash of a US-made Bell 212 helicopter, according to reports, I believe. And that's still ongoing. And you do have that speculation, right? Because Iran is a major country. It also has some adversaries like the US and like Israel, especially right now, where they have kind of made themselves the adversaries of Iran more specifically. So when it comes to that speculation, what are people on the ground there looking at? Are there concerns that there was foul play, and at the same time, are they also looking at it and going, well, it could have also been a tragic accident given the weather that was happening, the mountainous region that they were in, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so you hear both that stories or narratives of what happened. The state media is focusing on the crash and finding evidence. I have not seen any speculations of sabotage or attempts of assassination being reported on the like different official channels. But on the other hand, on social media, Iranian journalists and media personalities are referring to a few circumstances that were occurring right before and around the time that the crash happened, and making speculations that the case of sabotage cannot be totally ruled out. And that's because, as you said, first of all, President Raisi came right after from meeting with Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has very good ties with Israel. Israel has a strong presence in Azerbaijan in the political system. They have an influence, and um, um, we also have a very long history of Israel's hostility against Iranians. Israel has assassinated our nuclear scientists. It has supported various terrorist groups to assassinate Iranian officials. Israel has bragged actually about, killing different Iranian officials. We know how they attacked our embassy. And the second thing is that Israel has always acted as a coward, and they do not want to face Iran directly and face to face, because that would have a lot of consequences for them. So they usually resort to more covered operations to inflict harm upon Iran or many other countries. But it's also that there's another fact that brings the Iranian nation's attention to the US and Israel, is that we have been under sanctions, and during the years that we have been put under unilateral sanctions that are by the international law illegal, we have not been able to purchase different, like, the parts of airplanes or helicopters. We have not been able to purchase them and to repair them. And that's also one thing that, for example, the foreign minister of Iran, Javad Zarif, referred to as to say that the US was one culprit. And that is true, because this was a US made aircraft that we had, and we could not update it because of the sanctions. And if there's like a technical issue, that could be blamed on the parts that have not been updated or upgraded, the US is also to blame. So there are different things that happened. And by the way, let's not forget that our foreign minister Amir-Abdollahian was also supposed to attend indirect talks with the US in Oman. So we were just about to reinitiate indirect talks with the US too. So there are many different things that that these journalists and media personalities are referring to say that the possibility of sabotage cannot be totally ruled out. But apart from that, we don't really have any evidence yet.
Yeah, and that's good to keep in mind. I know that obviously the investigation is still ongoing. You have a lot of different factors that they are looking at right now. When it comes to President Raisi and kind of how he was viewed, I know that, the Western media was very quick to, I would say, criticize him, make a lot of claims about him, right? That was the first thing that they did as soon as his death is reported. He was elected back in 2021. But I'm curious as to how the Iranian people saw him. I know that he was described as a hardliner by the West, but how do you think that the people of Iran viewed him and viewed his leadership?
Well, the way the Western media and the mainstream media frame Iranian politics, it's like there is a one hardliner, and there is like a moderate front, and they're always fighting, and like there is no democracy because, for example, the quote unquote supreme leader has the final say. But what they miss is that just like many other countries, we have different political parties, and what they call hardliner based on their perception is not even actually one political party. We have the conservatives, we have the principalist, we have the reformists, and even like they have been there are more fractions within those political parties, and they have always competed with each other. Sometimes like the reformist win, sometimes the conservatives, sometimes the principalists. So it's very dynamic power structure, and um, this is true that the last election that we had and President Raisi was elected, we witnessed the lowest election turnout, and it was because of all the grievances that people had about the economic conditions, which is partly due to the sanctions that have been imposed on Iran, and it's crippling our economy. But he was very popular, especially when he was the head of the judiciary system, because he brought about a lot of reforms. When people were complaining about corruption within the judiciary branch, he eradicated a lot of that corruption, and he was actually praised for that by many, even those who criticized him, um, or who did not or did not agree with him on a lot of the policies that he had. Or, for example, I personally did not vote for him. I did not agree with everything or all the policies that he had, but I, like many other Iranians, viewed him as a very honest man, as a person who wanted to serve the people. So he was very popular with the lower classes, and they remembered him as the servant of the nation. That's the title that he used for himself, and people remembered him with. And so I think his popularity was not only what the people, as a good person, as a good politician, as an honest man, was not only with the people that voted for him, but beyond that. And I think we're going to see that in the funeral, which is going to be held in the next few days in different cities. Um, so yeah, he was very, very respected. A lot of figures from like the Reformist Party, the conservatives, a lot of people that you would think they are his rivals, a lot of people within the political structure that criticized him heavily all during these years that he was in power, expressed a deep condolences and sorrow, and praised him exactly as a man who was very honest, and who did not work for money, did not accumulate wealth for himself as the president, and his main and only concern was to serve the country, even though the methods or the approaches that he had was not agreed or accepted by everyone, because there's the society is dynamic, and one person agrees and the other person doesn't agree on it.
Yeah, and that's good to know. I appreciate you kind of laying out how things stand there, because I feel like the West gets such a skewed version of it, and they try to act like everything is all black and white, and like there's not, multiple ideas, personalities, and beliefs at play. Now, I know when it comes to where Iran goes from here, the country is entering into 5 days of mourning now. When it comes to who the next president is going to be, we've got the vice president who will be acting president for the next 50 days. Do you think that he's likely to run for the presidency? Are there other front runners that you're kind of keeping an eye on here?
Well, at this point, I don't like, there are speculations about who is going to be candidates, and the vice president is one of the people that one of the figures that people speculate I would run for presidency, but we're not sure yet, and we have to wait because we're still mourning, and it's been very tragic, and we still like the country still needs time to decide and to form maybe alliances, or decide, like for example different parties will decide who they are going to send for the election campaign. So we still don't know, but I think we're going to see probably a diverse, like people from a diversity of political inclinations applying for the election as candidates.
Yeah, and I know that, it being in that time where it's still so early, everyone is in shock. It's hard to kind of even look forward and say, where do we go from here when they're still processing the news that they have received over the last 24 hours. Now, in regards to Iran's foreign minister, who was also killed in the crash, he was a longtime diplomat and a force on the international stage. With his loss, do you think that that will have an impact on Iran's foreign relations, especially with regional countries like, say, Saudi Arabia, who he helped broker a deal with to resume diplomatic relations last year?
Mm-hmm. Well, he was a very revered diplomat that worked with both the reformist and the principalist, or you would say like conservative. So he was respected by different political fractions inside the country, and he was very well experienced, and he was part of the negotiations team and for the nuclear talks. But it's very important to remember that the political structure in Iran, it does not rely on one person. So the different fractions, they work as a team. So yes, there's one person that stands out as the most important person playing the role, but it's not like one person making decisions, and the decisions are made in coordination with the other members of the team, as well as in coordination with other branches. So I don't think it's going to affect the Iranian political system or the Iranian foreign policies at all. And the people who are going to replace him for the remaining 1 year of his presidency that was remaining, they're going to be the ones who have been trained by him, who have worked with him. They have the same ideas. They have, as I said, it's not like one person's ideas. This is like a political system with an approach that has been decided with discussions and debates within the foreign ministry, and it's not like run by only one person, so that it would affect the entire decision making within the foreign ministry.
Yeah, and that's also good to keep in mind. Now, lastly, and on the continued topic of that structure, I know that Iran's political structure is poorly understood in the West, to put it lightly. For instance, we are told that the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, what role does he play, rather, what role does the president play in Iranian politics? Could you explain kind of the power dynamics there?
So the supreme leader, I actually don't like to use the word supreme leader because it's like the Farsi word that we use. It's like not the translation of the Farsi word that we use. And in Farsi, the word that we use is like the leader of the revolution. That's the Farsi term that we use to talk about him. So yeah, he has the final say, but he is also monitored by the what do you call it, assembly of experts, and the members of the assembly of experts are directly and indirectly elected by the people. So so it's not like he inherited a position and has to stay in power for the rest of his life. there are like there is an assembly that monitors his actions, and for example, if he passes away, or if there is a problem, or if they decide that he should no longer be in power, they can decide whether between like there's an election between them, the representatives that have been elected, to decide like who's going to succeed him. But it's also, but if you want to understand if he is like dictating everything or not, you should just look at the dynamics of the politics inside Iran. So when we have a lot of the policies that we have adopted, for example, in regards to looking into West or East when it comes to foreign policy, are very different between when the presidents are different. So that shows you that there's like not one person saying the final word and dictating what should be done. There is a space for the presidents and the foreign ministers and the diplomacy system to decide or between themselves. So and anyone who is elected will choose a team that agrees with him and thinks like him, and they will proceed with the process. So if you look at this dynamism and the diversity of approaches that exist within the political system inside Iran, you will understand that this is not a one-person rule or one-person country. And it's funny how I see on social media, especially, that people are speculating that the quote-unquote supreme leader's son is going to succeed the president. And it doesn't make any sense, because the president is elected in a very different format and approach, and the supreme leader's son has nothing to do with it, and nobody's even talking about his succession. So it's very confusing, and you see that on mainstream media. So and it tells you that they do not understand anything about Iran's politics.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I had no idea about the translation of that. I had honestly only ever heard supreme leader, so that's really interesting to see that it actually is leader of the revolution. And I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to kind of dispel some of those rumors, explain some things that our audience listening in may not understand about Iran, because they are constantly surrounded by all of the Western propaganda about the country. And thank you also for bringing us up to speed on all of the latest there. Satareh Sadeqi, an Iran-based independent journalist and researcher, thank you so much for your time and insight today.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for trying to show a different perspective from inside Iran.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.